It has to be very awful to actually like stand up and leave. So they'll show up, they're like, watch my content, but they'll be like, yeah, and buy my shit. Attention is the most valuable resource in the global economy. Tech's boring. No, I'm just kidding. The truth is that, so I've been working at Typeform for like, 6 years now, 7 years. Yeah. The first 5 years I was leading the creative team, like setting up the creative team and leading the Typeform brand. And then for the last 2 years, I've been running the Video Ask brand, right? And so Video Ask, for those of you who don't know, Typeform is an online form builder company. Video Ask is a video forms type of thing, just like long story short. And it was when I was running Video Ask that I realized of the power of video and like just like raw video interactions. I started looking into the creator space. My background is on film, so I kind of have like a sweet spot there. And I got super hyped. I've been making content low key for the last 2-3 years, and it's something that I can get out of my head. So I'm like, it's now.
Yeah.
So we're doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I think that's when we first met, was when you were working on the Video Ask project, and we were running one of our front row conferences. Mm-hmm. I think might have been 2020 when we first had Alex on, and you actually blew our minds because, like, number one, you're actually the first person that like directly reached out to us wanting to be a part of the conference that we said yes to. We didn't say yes to anyone else. Like, we were always outreaching to specific creators, and you just hadn't come across our radar. And then we saw you and we're like, all right, this dude actually had some interesting insights. Like, we want him to present. And then you presented this workshop and people loved it. Like, they completely loved it. And it just felt different. And like, it was still like just a presentation, but it felt different to us. And that was super exciting to see. And I'm kind of interested to hear from your perspective, like when you're presenting, like you're in Melbourne at the moment, right? Yeah. And you're actually lucky because we've got some really nice weather today. But you're speaking at the No BS conference, which is happening tomorrow and the day after, and you're giving a talk, right? So like, for everyone who's listening at home, who's also, trying to do their own presentations and try to run their own events and things like this, like what are some really key things that you think about when you're actually presenting that makes a huge difference to how people actually interact with you?
That's a really good question because it's changing over time. So I have some sort of framework that I follow every time that I make like a talk for like a setup like that, where it's like I will start with a story, then I'll follow up with the main idea of the talk, and then I'll give some examples and frameworks so people can actually implement it. So that's usually like what I follow. This time though, I'm like trying to break my own rules a little bit. I want to make it more interactive. I'm talking about how creators build their brands and what like conventional brands can learn from creators. And there's a lot about authenticity, relatability, interaction, and stuff like that I want to implement to the talk itself. So I'm trying to make like the audience participate a little bit, especially at the end. And yeah, that's what I follow. Usually it's like some sort of story to captivate at the very beginning. But this time I have so much stuff that I want to like talk about that I just keep that part and I go straight into like frameworks and like masterclass type of vibe.
Sure. I think there's like an important balance there between having all this information you want to give out, but at the same time being able to present a story, right? Like if you have too much information, it actually detracts from the story itself. So it's like a real balance between, what information you actually give and being able to tell a really, a well-connected story.
Yeah, and that's something that I don't think like you'll nail it this is the first time that I'm giving this talk. I've literally been working on this for the last 5 days. So I feel like the more times I give this talk, like I'll refine it. But I think sometimes it's just like you just want to like put the content out there, and especially with the creator economy, everything is changing so much so fast that like when I was like preparing this like 3 days ago, starting like put out the outline for this, I'm like, do I really want to spend the first like 3-4 minutes like telling a story and like blah, blah, blah. I'm just like trying to like try something different and just like go right into it and and see if that works.
Yeah, for sure. And that's interesting because like often we hear like conference speakers and they tell their own personal story for like the first 5-10 minutes.
Absolutely.
And it's like there's a lot of times where it's like, okay, great, like I understand what you're trying to do, but at the same time, like I don't really want to hear your life story. Just like give me the value, right? Like what's the information I need to know?
This is, yeah, I can relate to that, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm trying to avoid. Like when I've worked on this dog like this last weekend and stuff, I was like trying to have like a creator approach. Like if like trying to be like Mr. Beast of my own talk is like, how am I gonna deliver like in a lot of value in the first minute? Where like I sometimes I feel like if you're like putting out the story, you're like try to, it's like kind of like influencing the attention, like try to get attention, but where's the real value? I don't know. Right? So like I'm like just like experimenting a little bit with that and like the format, and I think the topic is so hot that I would just rather spend like 30 minutes or like whatever time I have like talking about like just dropping like facts and articles. Like the creator economy is like evolving so fast that I feel like it's interesting to like start from like the real context. Like I don't need to go and like make up a story. There's so much stuff out there, like all the articles happening about TikTok and Amazon now like signing up with NFL to like throw up like a match or like a play on like the Black Friday day, like stuff like that to me is mind blowing. So I would rather like spend the first 5 minutes like dropping these type of facts and was like, guys,
yeah, which is interesting, right? Because we look at today's like content creators, like the top YouTubers and things like that. Like they're all about retention. They're about like when as soon as you click play on a video, like they give you, you know, that punchline. They give you that story like right away, and they give you everything immediately.
Yeah.
And that's so they can hold your attention throughout the rest of the content. Like I guess like from your perspective, like thinking about the creator economy and how, you know, brands and people who are building, you know, personal brands as well, and thinking about how they kind of present, like what are some key things that they can kind of take from today's, you know, top creators and actually apply that to their own brand and presentations?
That's a great question. I feel like in the setup of a presentation, like a talk or something like that, it's very different because like when you're on YouTube, you're like scrolling, you start playing like a video, and like if you don't like it, just get the fuck out of there and just like bye.
Sure.
Like good luck. On a conference setup is like different because like you're sitting there. Like what I'm trying to like experiment, like do I really want to play this game or try something different? And I feel like in general for like anyone like dropping like valuable content or like talking about something, you can learn from what these creators are doing. Like, you know, the first 30 seconds is like super important, the first minute is super important. Then if you grab their attention, you need to like keep reminding them why they're there. And like I feel like on spaces like YouTube or TikTok, like it's not like the attention. Someone said the other day, like very well, it's not the attention span shorter, but the time that I'm gonna allocate to decide if this is valuable for me to stay, it's reduced. So now my attention span, but like the commitment that I make at the very beginning, it's like shorter for me to decide whether I stay or not. I don't know if this answers your question, but like...
It does, yeah. And I think you brought up a good point there around attention. And I think intent, we talk about intent a lot when we're internally with the Storytell team. Because like when someone's running an event, for example, like they've got an intent, and having a good intent and understanding what that intent is from the get-go is really important. And often it's things like engagement and things like that. But as a creator, like your intent is to grab attention. Right? And we live in a world where attention is today's social currency, and like it's not about money anymore. It's about, you know, how many followers you got and how many views you can get. Like I'm interested to hear from your perspective how you can kind of think about attention as a gateway to actually growing a brand.
I feel like I'm biased to give you this answer because what I do is branding. A lot of people might disagree with me, but I don't think brands don't exist, in my opinion, to make money. Brands exist to generate trust. Making money is the byproduct or the consequence of building that trust. That's what I believe, and that's how I like build brands, right? When it comes to like attention and content and like how we relate online, the same thing applies. I would even go one step farther. You said like attention is the currency of social, like social media and stuff like that. I would dare to say that attention is the most valuable resource in the global economy. And like when you look at like the top most valuable companies, Google's there, Amazon's there. I thought at the beginning that data was what was valuable, like also working in tech, like you believe that. But I'm starting to think it's just attention, because data is used to cater stuff more to your interest so you can grab the attention. So in my opinion, I think it was Alex Hormozi or someone like that, like said the other day on a video that attention is the new oil. I 100% believe that. And I think brands, if you can, like at the end of the day, building a brand is like building the reputation of a company. You want to get paid with attention, because attention might not lead to money today, but might lead to loyalty and money in the future, and might lead to word of mouth. And that's like growth for the company. So I feel like in general, that's something to keep in mind.
For sure. Now, it's a very busy world today, right? There's a lot of noise going on. So it's like, how do we create attention when there's actually so much people actually screaming for attention? Have you got any thoughts on that?
If I had, I would probably be like at home making shitloads of content. I'm trying to figure out, like, look, I don't know. But what I understand, or what I think is, in order to get someone's attention, you need to be contextual of that person and their interests, right? So the more you understand who you're talking to, the more likely you are to serve something that might be interesting to them. And so the more you're likely to get their attention. That's all I can say right now, because I'm trying to figure it out.
In your kind of like little bio for this conference coming up, you had a couple of different things I pulled from that. And the first one being is authenticity is more important than perfection. And the second one being is relatability is more important than authority. Like, I'm kind of keen to hear why you kind of think like that, and how specifically a brand can kind of adopt this and what the benefit is.
Well, they're connected. The benefit is the world's changed. I'm talking about this on the talk. I feel like I was preparing the talk and I was like, I'm talking about purpose-driven branding, right? Like, that's what I think, like, we all can agree that, like, branding is about purpose, right? We've been talking about this, Simon Sinek, we learned from him, Apple and shit like that. Yeah. But dude, I was like preparing the deck and doing my research, and I'm like, wait, when did Steve Jobs die? Do you know?
2011?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
That's
19.
Yeah, very well. Exactly. Dude, that's like 11 years ago.
Yeah. That's actually crazy.
It's actually pretty crazy.
I was 12. You were like 10. If that wants to make you feel old.
Yeah, it works. So Simon Sinek, the start with Why Talk and like all of that. You've probably seen it. That was 2009. Yeah, right. 13 years ago. Like, I'm not saying this is not relevant today. I'm just saying when Steve Jobs died, Facebook didn't own Instagram yet. It had the old like clunky like app logo with like camera. TikTok didn't exist. It was launched in 2016. Then something happened in 2020 and then we're here. Yeah. And so it's been like more than 10 fucking years where like things have changed completely. And so I'm like, I still think that purpose-driven brands are like how brands are built. But I also think we're like also shifting, or like I'm seeing a lot of like relation-driven branding. Yeah. Where like it's not that much about like, like Simon Sinek would say, like start with why, but start with who. And when you're thinking about like Mr. Beast with Mr. Beast Burger, or Prime with like Logan Paul, I'm like, it's not that much about like what's the purpose of this brand, but who is behind, what's their story, and like how like the brand is as strong as the connection I feel with the person behind it. And I feel like that doesn't apply only to creators, but it also applies to like I don't know, brands like Tesla, for example, and my relationship with Elon Musk, right? And stuff like that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, exactly. And like we were talking about, like it's the relatability of that brand and it's the authenticity of that brand. And I think Be Real is a really interesting conversation, right? I'm sure you've heard of Be Real. He's clearly got a couple of thoughts. But I think it's interesting because like we still do live in a world where it's like when you post something on Instagram, it has to be perfect, right? You post something on YouTube, it kind of has to, it's a little bit more real, but like even TikTok, like you have to worry about, making sure your hair's good and things like that. And then a platform like Be Real has come out where the idea is to be super authentic and you just take a photo in the moment and you share it with your close friends and that be it. I think there's something really interesting there in the landscape of things of this conversation of authenticity versus having a perfect image and like a perfect look.
I'm gonna give you an example, and it's a pragmatic example, but because people say, organic content, TikTok doesn't convert. I'm like, you can measure.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it doesn't convert.
Yeah.
It's hard for you to measure. Yes. It's hard for you to attribute those like 10 grand that like you're dropping a month on TikTok. Is this generating like 20 grand? Like it's Zuckerberg's not there to tell you. That doesn't mean it's not happening. And I'm gonna give you an example. So I'm advising a company called Aular.com, and what they do is they do it's like masterclass.com, but for electronic music producers. Really cool. So I've been working with them. I love their brand, and I've been working with them, like helping them shape the brand and so on. And for every instructor or music producer that they work with, they'll put together a trailer, right? And I was like, they were shooting in LA like a few months ago, and I was there, and I went to the shooting with them, and they were like shooting like the promo shots. And I'm like, Mark, the founder's Mark, I'm like, Mark, let me try something. And that was Kanye's music producer that did the Jesus album, right? And so we're shooting there, the guy's super cool. I'm like this guy is just like so charismatic. I'm like, just in between, like in a break, I'm like, can you pick my phone and say, hey guys, I have this masterclass, is out, go check it out now. Like literally like this, exactly what I said, shot on this phone. Yeah. And then they edited the trailer. They have like super great talent, so the trailer is like spot on. It's like 15 seconds. And then we had this clip. I'm like, test this, A/B test this, see what happens. The clip got like, I think it was 7 times more engagement.
Oh, wow.
My phone clip. And then 3 times more conversion. Because people just like, it was more relatable. It was the same shot in the same place, same time, like, but it was like the camera. So when you think like Mr. Beast, this guy has like, he can do anything he wants. Well, he does it actually. But so why is his video look some like kind of crappy? Because that's what works. Like the guy could literally like put like proper lighting, higher DOP, like no problem for him. But he doesn't do it because he knows that the more you overproduce something, the less people, like the less relatable it is. And like for brands, that's challenging because that means that people like me who have studied like, cinematography or art direction or design for like how many fucking years, we need to, first of all, kill our ego and be like, it's okay if it's not perfect, because that's what we've been trained to do for like so many years, and then unlearn all of that and try something different. And I think that's the main problem with like most brands are designed for perfection. Their creative teams are designed for excellence. That's what they do. They're really good at like design, copy, but then they create some Instagram post like nobody gives a shit. And that's a problem. And in a world where if you do good content, you can literally get paid to market stuff, which, can we stop here for a second? You can literally get paid to market your stuff. Like Chris though is really good at this. Yeah. Right? I mean, so you know what I mean? Like, why would you give your bag to good old Zuckerberg, and go figure, and then he'll give you like the 0.5 conversion or whatever rate. But then you're sitting on an opportunity that like it's too hard for you to figure out because your whole organization is designed for something different. And I feel like that's when I started realizing about this with Typeform, VideoAsk, and the way like I built the two brands in different ways because they require different things. I was like, wait a minute. It's like mind blowing, and it took me a while. But yeah, I feel like that was a very interesting journey to like go from like Typeform, which was like a super like designy, like perfectionist brand, to like VideoAsk, like that was like a video driven brand, or like even like Storytel. Like if you expect people to go live for events, you cannot overproduce it, because what you end up doing is you end up creating a barrier between the user and the promotion you're posting, that they'll like feel intimidated and they'll feel like they're not good enough to use your product. And so that's what I learned with VideoAsk. It was like we had to like take it easy, and I think like that applies to every brand, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you think it's important to kind of, especially when you are trying to put a face to a brand and try to humanize the brand, is it important to, I guess, stay consistent with who that face is? Like the example of Mr. Beast, which, you know, one of the largest creators in the world. Like he's got a team of people, but it's still him at the forefront. And similar to what we've done with Pitchproof, like when we run our conferences and things like that, like people like see that brand as my face and my personality. Yeah. Problem is if I want to scale that business even further and do more stuff where I am less of the face of the content itself, then does that like create an injustice in terms of your branding, because no longer than I am, you know, the person who's in front of the camera and it's somebody else? Like, is that going to do me a disservice?
Yeah, I wish I could give you an answer, but I haven't figured out that one yet. For creator brands like, and this type of like YouTube creators or like TikTok creators, like it's like that brand is obviously built around them. Yeah. So like it wouldn't make sense to necessarily like change the face of the brand. There's plenty of interviews. I think there's one with like Colin and Samir with Mr. Beast, where he explains that literally like his IP is his face. Like that's what he needs to bring to every video. If that's not on the video, it's not a Mr. Beast video. So like he's trying to like build the business around that notion where like he needs to be in the video, but that's a massive liability because, you know, it's like it's something, it's not scalable. Or it is scalable, but it's tricky because it's a liability for the business. I have not figured out, but like this specifically, but when we talk about commercial brands trying to like embed into this narrative and like this type of like relationships, I feel like what I've learned so far is like you can still have like a front face that can represent your brand, or you can diversify it. I think HubSpot was doing very well on YouTube with educational content. If you go and check it out, I think HubSpot, they have like 2 different channels, and one of them is more educational, the other one is more product. On the educational one, what they did is like they hired like, I don't know, 4 or 5 creators from their homes. They're doing videos all the time. And so like the face, it's not like the brand is associated to one face, but to like a few. I feel like in a way, the Future was a good example of this too. Obviously the Future is Chris Do, but at some point there were like and that's when I was really hooked at the Future. I really like what like they were doing. I was like I learned so much about brands also from looking at what Chris was doing with the Future, because he built this narrative of like different characters. So you had Matthew, you had Ben Burns. So depending on your personality, you could connect more with one or the other. You had Melinda Lipsy. So it was like, you could connect with all of them, and there's like this spectrum of characters that were representing the brand with Chris at the core. But I thought that was interesting. So for brands trying to like jump in this space and like be part of this narrative, I think that's something smart. And honestly, like we say like I always say that the logo is the face of the brand. but honestly, like, you know, like I feel like with a creator, you can have a creator like build your brand, and I'm assuming like if that person needs to go and do something else, you can have someone else. Maybe it'll take a bit for the audience to get used to it, but I mean, we all have more important things to do that like look at brands, you know, social accounts. So people will get over it, and the benefits of that, in my opinion, are huge compared to just like putting like design paid ads, you know, on Facebook or something like that.
Sure. I almost think you can take it like a TV sitcom approach, where you have this wide panel of cast, right? And then if someone does drop out in, say, season 3, like you've got the rest of the cast to support that. And then over time, as you know, you do more episodes, you actually introduce more characters into this story that you're trying to create. So therefore, you're actually creating, you know, a bit of a safety net. So if someone else does leave, like you've got someone else that kind of can fill that place.
Yeah, that's smart.
The way like looking at it like that. Also, like whenever a character dies in like a TV show, I mean, it's so dramatic. But like next season we're over it, and like it's kind of refreshing most of the time. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing. And again, the benefits, in my opinion, are huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. By the way, guys, if you have any questions at all, feel free to go to the Ask button and put your question in there so I can ask Alex. But yeah, let's continue on. Now, let's get into a little bit of a nitty-gritty in terms of how a brand can leverage thinking like a creator. Like, what are some of your top tips you want to give people?
Right. So what I told you before, that example of the conversion rate. So don't overdo your ads. Like, don't overdo your ads. That's the most important thing. And if that means like trying to like partner with an external creator to like do a few TikTok videos or like something like that and experiment with that with like a little like budget, please do it. But just don't overdo your ads. That's the best advice, like the best thing we can learn from creators. Me picking up my phone and like talking to the camera and being like, oh, bought this shit, or like, oh, just like I founded this company and it's like the dream of my life. Like, go check it out. Like, that's so much powerful. Like, that's so powerful. And again, like authenticity, relatability. Like, it's okay to fuck up. Like, just say, like, you know, just like be open about it. Many companies are too like self-centered and like self-aware that it's just like annoying to watch. And so I would say like these things, video. Here's a good one. So when I started that, so my background's on film. So I had my own studios, like doing fashion film, like whatnot. And
What sort of films?
I was doing fashion films and like also like short films and stuff. Like, but everything was like so like well lit, and like it was just like. I remember those days and I'm like, oh my gosh, what a waste of time. But anyways, like we did that and I started Typeform with that mentality, right? And so my first hire, believe it or not, at Typeform was a film producer. Like, what a surprise, right? And then a designer, right? So that was my core team. It was like me, this producer dude, and like the designer. And like, that's how I started. So like my intuition was like right, but I had no fucking clue. Like it took me too long to get into YouTube, to understand YouTube, because of like this pretend. I was like, oh, Vimeo, because the quality is better. Like, who gives a shit? So, but that was my thinking, this idea of perfection. But I hired this producer. Whatever you like, I think like the best recommendations like I can give you is like, think video. Like honestly, and like. Maybe some people will like not like this, but if you know of any tool that can give you video without you having a videographer, DM me on Instagram right now. I don't know it. But you have Canva and Squarespace, and like you have all these tools that'll give you like design templates. So I'm starting to believe, and please, if you don't agree with this, DM me, I want to talk with you. Because I'm starting to believe that if I set up a business today, my first hire is not going to be a designer. It's going to be a videographer or a creator, actually. Because if you know how to make videos, you probably know how to tell stories. With some design tool or guidance or a few templates that a designer can do in a week, you can probably do well. But if you're a designer, you're gonna die if I ask you to make a video. not mentioning if I ask you to be on the video. You're gonna be like, you didn't hire me for this. Like, you're gonna say yes, but you're gonna be like, no. So that's my best recommendation. And it's so obvious. I like on my talk, it's like, I have a section where it's like the 7, how did I call that? The 7 creator virtues, right? Number 7 is video. It's so obvious though. But how many companies do you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's the skill set to be a creator is actually quite broad. Like you have to have some sort of, video skill set. You have to have some sort of personality to, feel good on camera. You have to have some sort of design skills. Like I feel like there's a lot of sort of like, even if it's just like being a generalist and all these sort of things, like you have to kind of have your hands in all of them to really understand the depth of like what being a creator is.
And also, yeah, I get that. I agree with that. And also something that creators do because they have to. Okay, let's get into that. Okay. So here's the thing. When you're a creator, no one's giving you money.
Yeah.
And you're not selling shit.
So we must be creators, right?
We're all are, in a way, in our hearts. But like what you're trying to do is to build an engaged audience that will make a platform, aka YouTube, give you money. That is very obvious. But it's a critical like difference from this type of entrepreneur to every other business. Because every other business, they're trying to fucking sell you something. So they'll show up, they're like, watch my content, but they'll be like, yeah, and buy my shit. And you're like, the reality is a creator gets paid by attention. That's what we were talking about before, the currency. That's their currency. Like if they don't get paid, like if their video sucks, they don't get paid. They don't get attention. If their video is great, they get a lot of attention. Video potentially could go viral and then make money may follow. That's a critical difference because brands don't think this way, and it's a shame. And that's why their content sucks most of the time. And I've been there. I've been there. You're trying to eventually sell something, and it's very hard to like get money to just the organic, like proper like organic stuff, because the attribution is broken, right? So it's hard to justify that money. And I feel like with video and stuff like that, you need to have a very clear idea of like, why is this video valuable? Who are you talking to? And all that stuff. And I feel like when you're doing that, you are like on your merry way to actually try to do something. But don't expect then these people to go and buy your stuff. Like it's just not gonna work.
Yeah, again, I think it's intent, right? Like I think the Future's a good example because like their income streams, like probably majority of it is like their coaching group and courses and things like that. Like they sell products, right? They're not trying to, just monetize their YouTube content and then that's just their one revenue stream. Like they've got another like specific revenue stream that they're trying to take income from, and their content is the gateway to get people into that. But again, I think their intent is really important because they are super authentic. Like even if you don't buy something, like I still want to give you value in this video. And I think that itself is probably a big key difference to, a brand that's like posting a YouTube video because they want to sign up versus a brand who's, creating a video to add value. And if someone finds that really valuable, they'll start a connection with them and then they'll get put in the sales funnel.
Right.
Rather than trying to do the other way around and put them in the sales funnel at the start. I see almost like a bit of a trend with like the Future and things like that, where they actually try to give content first, build a relationship, and then there's the extra sell on top of that.
Yeah, and also to be able to do that, you need to understand how your content is doing, right? So if you really only care about the audience and you really only care about the content, well, you got to know how the content is doing. Right? Because if you're looking at sales, you're then not looking at content, because what you want is sales. I've seen this all the time. Like we'll start the brand awareness campaign, but like, a month or like 2-3 weeks down the line after the brief was delivered and shit, they're like, yeah, well, like let's try conversions. I'm like, again? So it happens all the time. And this is something that also we can connect back to what you were saying before, like, so well, like what tips or what can we learn from creators? The reason why creators are so good at what they do is because they care. Because their content is their product.
Yeah.
Right? They're building this audience, and the way that they do it is through content. If their content sucks, there's no audience, there's no YouTube partnership for 50,000 hours. There's nothing, right? And so what do? They measure it.
Sure.
I mean, it's funny, but like when you think about how brands are built and how creative dream teams I build, and like at least like I talk about my experience, like usually what happens is you'll hire a designer because you need a designer, you need a copywriter. And then you like maybe hire another designer, and then maybe at some point you hire like an operations person. You have like a 5-people team. Maybe you have like a videographer in there, if you're like progressive or something. Am I right? Please. I mean, like maybe I'm like I don't know, but that's the reality. And like I've been there. I built my team at Typhoon this way. I didn't know better. So what happens with that is that you will get the designer to make a few posts for Instagram because they're doing like landing pages and the important shit. And then what'll happen is that like some social media manager person that most likely just finished their degree on marketing or something. So they're like, getting started, will post it. And what happens here is like there's a fragmentation. Very rare, and I've seen in a company where like these two people work, even like sitting close to each other. I mean, like now it doesn't really matter, but you know what I mean? Like there's not a lot of communication between them. The only reason why creators are so good at what they do is because they're obsessed with metrics. They're obsessed with analytics. And this is something that if your training has been like I went to film school, or your training has been I went to design school, you were not trained this way. You weren't trained with like reviews from like mentors or teachers or instructors or whatever, or like the critiques or like your peers, but it's all like opinion based versus the creative content that like we put out as brands. It's all like performance based. On what's end up happening is like these people, these creatives that work on a creative team never or rarely look at metrics. Like how many people on a creative team do you think they have the account, their Instagram account of the brand they work at on their phone? I have not met anyone yet. So that's something that really changed when like I was like, because VideoAsk was such a small team. It was like a little startup within Typeform. Typeform, the time that we launched VideoAsk was like 300, 400 employees. That's when I started. I joined the VideoAsk team early 2000. And 2020. Am I that old? And so I go, early 2000s, just like with my scotch here, So yeah, 2020, which feels like ages ago, by the way. But anyway, so I joined the team. It was like 8 people. It's like a little startup within Typeform. It's like 8 people. Yeah. David, the founder, one of the co-founders, and like 5 more people, like a developer, And it was just me at the beginning, like running the brand and design. And I had some external help from a designer. And then the first thing I did is like, let me try to do this in a different way. Let me try to actually talk with customers, but do this on the open and use content as my research. So that's what I did, and I started making content. For the first time, I asked the social media person running the whole like Typeform company handles and stuff. To give me access to the VideoAsk account. So I'd say, look, I know we don't have resources for this new thing. I'll just post it. That to me was like game changing. Because now when I'm like out like having dinner with my friends, the VideoAsk account was linked on my phone. And it was me running it. And like it was me reading the comments, replying to the comments. And like you'd be like, oh, but Antonino, you've been like running a team, like creative team for like, I don't know, 5 years and like doing talk. I don't care. Like that was the best thing that I could have done because I'm now seeing the early users adopting the product, talking to. I mean, I don't need to tell you anything. You guys been doing this from the very beginning. That's why I love you guys so much, because I'm like, you get it. But it's very rare that like founders or even like creatives, like people who are in charge of building that content, understand how this content is performing. Like, how are you gonna make it better? And maybe they get like a report at the end of the week or on Monday, or like a weekly thingy. Yeah. We're like, that's not gonna work. The reason why I was able to like deliver results for VideoAsk or Allart or like other companies that I've worked with is because like I've been doing the work. I've been like grinding and like, shit, this doesn't work. Let me tweak this like slide 8 of the carousel. Oh, let me add a call to action here. Let me change this word here. And after like 20 fucking carousels, oh, you know, now seems like they're working better. It's like, fuck yeah, because I figured out the fucking formula, and now this formula I can implement in other brands, and that this applies to everything. So I think like that's also broken. Like creative teams, God, I've been talking for like 10 minutes now. Creative teams don't have access on regular basis to metrics, and I think that's something can improve.
Yeah, you're right. And yeah, there's like that gap there. There's the internal team, there's the posting of the content and the actual social media, and then there's people who's actually engaging with it. And it's like, and we often see this when companies start to scale, and you know, often you hear founders go, oh, you know, the more my company grows, the less I'm actually talking to customers, right?
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And I think it's the same sort of approach when it comes to creating content as a brand. It's like there's a disconnect between actually talking to the people and the community who's actually interacting with your content versus the people actually creating it.
It's just, that's exactly it. And like when you think about like these super like growth YouTube hackers, like the Mr. Beast of the world or the Erax of the world, like, do you think, like, what do? Like, they obsess over metrics, they look at their click-through rate, they look at their average time bill, like all that shit, and like, they're obsessed over this. Like, every single interview, Mr. Beast talks about this. And no wonder your content is not doing good, because you're not even like, you don't even know how to like go into like YouTube Studio and look at the analytics. And hey, like, I'm the first one to like, I'm guilty of this, right? But I'm trying to like rewire my way of doing things, and that's why I'm so obsessed with the creator economy and like creators, because they know the game, and like they are sitting on like this free amount of attention and like leveraging it, and like brands are like just like pouring money into like paid ads, and I'm like,
I love that word, obsessed.
oh yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like you have to be not passionate, but you have to be obsessed.
It's obsessed. It's obsessed. Look, when I was in LA, I was in this. There's this. So if anyone is a creator here, there and you're interested, especially about like being an entertainment creator, like Mr. Beast or Erac, or like this like storyteller creator, not that much of an educator creator. There's a cohort called Creator Now. I think Erac co-founded with his manager Zach. I was in one cohort. It's so fucking good. Like, it's really good. I'm not a big fan of Eric's content. It's not I'm not the target. But the guys, like what they do is like, it's like amazing, right? And I was on like a workshop, the thumbnails that they did, physical, right? On like a room. Like for 3 hours, Eric, Zach, and like the creative director of their team, we're just talking about thumbnails. And like, oh, this guy has like this click-through rate, but then we changed this and like the color, and like, it was fascinating to see. And like, it's them doing it. Like, yes, you can hire like, for the technical aspect of it, you can hire a thumbnail designer, which by the way are a thing now.
Isn't it crazy, like the amount of like, just obscure jobs that have come up, like thumbnail designers and like, people who dedicate to putting subtitles on a video, and just like,
dude, it's not crazy. I know what you mean, but it's not crazy. It's just natural. It's like this type of content, it's replacing the old traditional media. It's just natural that it becomes industrialized in a way. To me, what's crazy is what these people are getting paid. Like $150 for a thumbnail that's gonna generate how many millions of views? You fucking kidding me? Do you think that the person who designed the Star Wars poster was paid $150 I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So this is how I look at it. To me, it's like normal. And like, I think the stats came out the other day about YouTube is now on top of Netflix in terms of watch time. September this year is the first time that YouTube has more streaming watch time than Netflix and like all the other the Hulu and like all the other platforms are below. Like, you know what that means? That means that mom and dad are like fitting YouTube into their kids and or their kids, that's what they're asking. And to me, it's like, that's the TV. It's just so obvious. So it only makes sense that this whole like economy kind of like industrializes in a way as Hollywood wants. Well, how Hollywood is like, you have the people writing scripts, you have people editing, you have like the assistant of the edit. It just makes sense.
Yeah. The Creator Now program that you're a part of, that cohort you're mentioning, what made that special? Like, a lot of our audience in particular with Storytel, like they're trying to create, you know, these cohorts, these educational sort of experiences, right? Like, what made this cohort in particular special? And it could just be the content, right? But was there something else to it that...
The content is good because, like, as you would expect, I mean, they bring, you know, like Erag and other creators that are in the same, like, managed by the same company. And the content was good. What I thought was unique was how the whole thing was set up. And I talked with them. I gave them I was like shocked because I've been in the pro group. I've been in like Aulard. They actually do content. So I've been like a different way, and also Video Ask. A lot of coaches were buying Video Ask to engage with their audiences and sell their like trainings and stuff. So I've seen a lot, right? What to me was very special about that one is like, first, it was action oriented. So they built like some sort of like dashboard where like you're supposed to post every week and they'll track you, they'll give you points. And like to me what made the difference is like the whole thing was gamified. So basically, depending on how much you interact, depending on how much you post, you would get points, and there was like awards and shit like that. And so everything was like, you know, data measured in terms of like your engagement. It's like very creator like design, you know what I mean? It's like designed for engagement. Like the whole cohort was designed for engagement. It was like working so well that I was very impressed. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Creator Now.
Creator Now? Cool, I'll have to search it up.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because you're at design, in the design world, experience design is typically UX, right?
Yeah.
I think that it's changing. I think that word is changing. Experience design is more around like that cohort, around like creating and designing an experience. It's almost more on a learning type area, and that like Mr. Beast, he is an experienced designer. It's just delivered in content.
Yeah.
He's designing an experience and plethora of different ways.
I would agree with that, yeah.
And we were kind of talking about this before we started rolling, right? Like, Mr. Beast being a good example, like some of his videos where he brings his audience onto an island. It's not just him creating content with like friends. He's actually engaging the people who is, you know, consuming his content and actually making them part of the actual experience himself. And even like some of the other ventures that he has, like Mr. Beast's Burgers or whatever, you know, sort of ventures he comes up with, like their experiences. And yeah, like we were kind of mentioning, like we're seeing this new kind of generation of creators forming, people who aren't just wanting to create content that sits on a feed, and they actually want to go deeper and they actually want to build, you know, better relationships with their audience. And yeah, we like to coin the term experience creators, right? And when we talk about experience-led content, that's kind of what we're talking about. So I'm really interested to hear from your perspective, Alex, like what do you make of that? And yeah, to Dale's point, like, is that the way things are going?
I have no fucking clue where things are going. Like that's like hands down. Like I have no idea. Like I'm just getting started in the whole like creator world. But I have to say that yes, I see that, and like I would agree with you. I think for whatever reasons, it's very beneficial to creators to bring the audience in their videos as much as possible, videos or content, whatever they do. It's just engaging. And then B, bring other creators in their content, because that's exposure and it works both ways. That's basically what the whole concept of Colin and Samir, like the reason why they exploded is like that's the whole channel is built around collaboration, right? And like every podcast is built around that idea. So for that, bringing, whether that's like peers on your industry or like creators, or that's your audience, it's a great idea to bring them in. And yes, like MrBeast does this with like how like they design the videos and like the whole experience of like the island stuff. But like I feel the way they design their TikToks, for example, and the way that they pull people from the audience, like I'm gonna give this random fan it's like $100,000, like yeah, like because people like they feel like they're part of it. Era calls their audience the mafia. I like this other guy that I think is very funny, Isaiah Photo, calls them the Too Easy Nation or something like that, Too Easy Army. It's just like trying to find ways to make them part of the story, whether that's featuring some of them, whether that's giving them like a name so they feel like part of a tribe. It just works because like they feel recognized. And I feel like this is an interesting conversation. It's like something interesting to observe now, I think, my opinion. I think it'll be way more interesting, like if we ever end up jumping into like the metaverse and stuff like that and Web3 and whatnot, and like we're all like jumping around, like how will content look like when we're in the metaverse? Like will we all like be like in like fucking like I don't know, Saturn or like Mars, like sitting down in like this like weird place, and like you're in Japan and I'm like in Spain and like you're somewhere else, and like we're all like in this now space, like watching a TV within the meta? I don't think so. So I think it'll be like
an experience, right?
An experience.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be like, like maybe experience design will be like somewhere around these terms. So things like these videos, like MrBeast videos or Erax videos, where like, oh, they're like eliminate different players. Maybe you can be one of these players, right? And maybe instead of like being like one core thing, maybe now it can be duplicated to like 1,000, because like you cannot have two MrBeast in planet Earth, but you could have like 1,000 MrBeast in the metaverse, which is interesting because now the experience can be way more personal.
And accessible.
And accessible. And like instead of me watching, I could be right there, just like experiencing with a duplicate of MrBeast.
That's crazy. Yeah. If you we're getting towards the end, so if anyone's got any questions, feel free to let us know in the chat. But if you were us at Storyteller, right? Like we're brands, we're starting to think about how we're going to go around content. Like what would you do if you were in our positions?
Can you say that again?
What would you do in terms of creating content and thinking like a creator if you were
running a brand or for myself?
Running a brand like Storyteller.
Oh. So I would like, first of all, I would start following every like creator influencer that like, you know, like if that's a thing, like the Colin and Samirs of the world, the JT Barnetts of the world, like all these people, like just follow them, notifications on, like just immerse on the culture. That's what I do the first thing, to learn as much as possible. Then like have a creator make content for you, and like that's something challenging because like it really depends on like the brand. A lot of people feel like, oh, but the TikTok thing is not really our tone, and like we don't want to dilute our brand. It's like, well, then figure out what's your tone that can fit on TikTok. It's easier to pay Mark Zuckerberg to just post some ads. But no, really, like that's what I would do. And then experiment. Like that's what like honestly, that's what I did with Video Ask. I'm sorry. That's what I did with Video Ask. I was like, I have a podcast. I'll have video tutorials, and we'll have guides. And I made like a little plan, like different types of content that we could try. And like, I thought the podcast would do very well, and it didn't. And the tutorials like took off like crazy. I was like, because you never know. But what I would do is like, just don't, like, I know this is hard. It's easy to say, it's harder to do. Just pick up your phone and record. And I have a hard time doing this because of my background on like filmmaking, and like, I'll be like, yeah, just the phone. Just the phone, right? And I'll put the phone, I'll be like, yeah, but just put it like that. I'll be like, actually, this plan, I can, you know what I mean? I'll start like, and then it's been like 30 minutes, haven't even started this shit. Like, I feel so angry about this. And like me, probably it's gonna happen to all of you, but just do it. Like, I don't know, for me, I'm like more mindful with my content because it's my personal brand. I'm like, I feel like I struggle more than, for example, when I was doing it for Video Ask. Maybe it's like not cool to say that, but like I gave less fucks because it was not my brand. So I was like literally just like there for the value, and like that's the right mindset. Like when I started like being like self-aware, it's like the plant a little bit more in, and like the light a little bit more like that. Fuck that. So that's like a good like advice. And like the person who's making shit for real, right? So the person who's making the content, they need access. I'm gonna say that again so you can clip it. The person who's making the content, they need access to the account. They need to be able to track the metrics and be able to like see the metrics and optimize. And I'm gonna tell you something. When they, even if they've never done this before, when they get it, like when they get that real access, not just like some report, no, just give them access. When they have the access, they get obsessed about it because like it's so good that you can actually see, and like when you actually get the little win where like, oh, I changed this and now I'm getting like this amount of it, that's addictive because you're like, you see the, it's like return on investment like really quick.
Dopamine.
It's the dopamine hit, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I got a question coming in.
Let's go.
Who's
that?
So this is Gab from Drop Music Branding. They actually run a
I know
audio
him.
branding.
Yeah.
So he wants to know your opinion on the role of music and in particular audio when it comes to creative brands building.
Let me think this one. I feel like in storytelling in general, music sets the tone, right? So it's very funny, but like if there's something I've learned, like making like fiction and like shorts and stuff, and like is that music will tell you how to feel. It could be the most dramatic scene with like the most dramatic lighting. If you put funny music, you'll laugh. It's as simple as that. Like for some reason, music it just like goes straight to your core and tells you exactly how you need to feel. So when it comes to picking music for your brand, like I use that reasoning. Like for example, Video Ask. We wanted to make people feel comfortable with the camera and just like chill and like it's like easy, right? So I started dropping like chill hop beats and like lo-fi beats on every tutorial because I wanted people to feel at ease, and it worked. People liked it, right? I think that would be my criteria to use music. Now, whether music needs to be used or not, and in which interactions, that's the tricky part. Like, I don't know if your question was more on what I just answered or this second part, because I feel like sometimes music gets in the way of actual engagement. It's the same thing with that we talked about before with design. Don't overdo it. I've seen with Aulard when I've been like coaching their team and like week after week like testing different ads and stuff like that. At some point I was like, just get rid of all the music. Get rid of it because it feels salesy. Like you're not talking with the phone and like there's music on the background. And I've noticed that when you get rid of the music, all of a sudden it's just like a normal person talking. Versus if you put some filler music, it's just an ad.
Yeah, I hate.
I remember an ad on the TV here in Australia, probably years ago now, but I remember this ad. I think it was like a road safety ad, and it would just be dead silent for like five seconds at the start, and you would look over at your TV and be like, "What's going on?"
Smart.
Like, gets your attention
Yeah.
straight away.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. It's like, I would say the same thing to like text on screen. Subtitles are fine, actually work really well. But like, don't put like just get rid of stuff. Like we actually have like trailers without art that they like edited. And when we're like on like final reviews, I'm like, get rid of the music, get rid of this copy that you're trying to put. Just like put the video, the person talking, and maybe like some like call to action at the end, but don't ruin it. Just like make it feel more natural, more like organic, right? And it just works. Like data, like every time, it's like more engagement. So when it comes to branding, use music to help you convey emotions and your personality. But be mindful on what interactions you choose to put music on, because if what you're looking is for engagement or relatability, you might not be doing any favors in certain places.
Interesting. Hey,
Tom, do you want to see if you can invite the Drop Music guys up?
That'd be cool,
Right
yeah.
stage. I just tried to chat with them in the chat because I think it'd be a cool interaction that could happen. But yeah, we won't take up too much more of your time, Alex. I mean, like, yeah, talking me through what your kind of plan is for the next few months and kind of where you're heading.
Right. It's taken me a while to figure out, and I'm still figuring out, to be honest. But so when I stopped working with Typeform, I knew that I wanted to make content because that's something that I've been wanting to do for like last 3 years, but I didn't prioritize, right? And had my job and stuff like that. Like now I'm like, that's my priority number one is content, and then other stuff. So I happen to have this obsession for the creator economy and this obsession for branding, and I realized there's a sweet spot in between that I can add a lot of value and that it's exciting to me like crazy, right? So what I'm gonna be doing for the next months is like, I wanna try to see if I can help creators build first-class brands and brands engage like creators. I feel like building at that bridge that it doesn't exist yet. Like if I can contribute to that, like I'm super passionate about. So if you're a creator and you're to the point where like you're trying like you're starting to think about your own personal brand, or you're starting a business on the side that you want to figure out, like talk to me, because like I want to learn from you. And if you're a brand trying to like figure out content, talk to me, because I want to learn from you too, and like see if we can help each other.
that's awesome. Do you reckon we can bring Gabba? Was he
Yeah,
there?
audio, video.
Oh, cool. Sounds good. All right, this is going to be a good test.
For a little hybrid, we might be able to hear ourselves. Good point. Cool. But Tom, if you mute on Storytel. Yeah.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Good.
tal? Hey, what's up?
You probably can't hear because we're on mute. No.
Awesome. I can hear you, but I gotta say this is amazing. It feels so relatable. I wasn't ready to be on camera. So I'm here.
You look great. You look great.
right now, and I gotta say I feel so related to a lot of stuff that you are talking about. I know we've talked about this, Alex. We are creators and we are musicians that turn through the path of life to turn out to be doing audio branding, which we love because it's doing music, that's what we do. And I think I was asking about the role of music, and your answer was so accurate because silence is so important, and it's key to understanding when to use music and when not to use music. But I understand that the quantity of content creation that brands need to do right now is a lot, so you can come up with tailor-made music all the time. But I think that there are key moments where having a tailor-made music and being so characteristic, it's very important. It's not like I'm reinventing the wheel. jingles and that kind of stuff have been forever. That's because they work. and there's the data. And I need to say that what I found more important, more valuable from this talk is something that I've been, understanding. I have a background of working on TV. I was the producer dude, and I think that breaking the one-way communication barrier is so important, and having these two-way communications that were the main thing that brought TV down, internet and this, hey chat, how are you doing? That Twitch is doing so great is amazing, and I think that that's what creators really understood and get this ROI from, It's like you said, it's ROI, immediate ROI, and brands can't break this traditional medium kind of communication, because I don't really understand, and might be a good question. Do you think it's essential to have a face? I think that people really understand and value the commitment of someone committing and putting their faces to a business. I think it's essential, but I think it helps.
I honestly, I think it's like very beneficial. I don't know for
mute. Sorry.
Oh, can I talk now?
We got you. Yeah, you good.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's like very. So first of all, thanks so much for interacting here. I feel like it's so different from like the fact that we can you can jump on stage, we can have a conversation like expand it. Like I think that's like so cool. So I feel like that's where we're going in terms of like content. And what you're saying is like completely like on point. I feel like whenever when it comes to music, I think there's moments to build that to build that emotion. Like in the same way you can tell people to be scared, or tell people to be warm and like on their heart, and like feel love and stuff like that. We all know the like Mr. Breeze type of like, and like that makes us laugh, right? And so that's the type of thing that in my opinion I'm like, that's powerful, right? So of course there's moments for like that type of stuff, and like that's something you cannot get with like a library, right? So I think like there's definitely moments for that, and yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gab, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate you jumping on. And yeah, it was great to kind of have this interaction.
Love it. Yeah.
Like
you know what? Like when I go to conferences, that I always ask if there's time for questions, because that's honestly my favorite time. And like if they let me, sometimes I'll just do Q&A, because I feel like it's just more valuable for people to just like ask their questions. Like we have the conversation, and it takes to places like don't expect. So like the fact that we're able to do that, like it's so cool. And if anyone has an idea or question, like jump in, and if not, we're gonna have coffee.
That's awesome. Alex, thanks so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it. That was a great conversation, and looking forward to hearing you talk in the next couple of days at the No BS conference.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks,
I'm
man.
super excited.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for
guys.
being here.
Have a good one.